Good evening and welcome to Politically Incorrect. We come to you tonight from the beautiful Safdar Hashmi Amphitheatre in Jamia Millia Islamia. As always, we're joined by Manishankar Iyer and Shapun Dasgupta to debate the big political story of the week. Well, this week saw the government battling perhaps one of its worst internal crises yet. Two top ministers at loggerheads after a 2G note from Pranab Mukherjee's finance ministry seemed to suggest that P. Chidambaram could have overruled former telecom minister A. Raja on the issue of 2G spectrum pricing. Well, we saw several days go by before some sort of a truce, an extraordinary joint press statement by the two ministers in question. But of course, a lot of questions still remain. And the opposition says it's not up to Mr. Chidambaram to accept Pranab Mukherjee's statement. This is now a matter that's gone beyond the internal workings of the Congress party and indeed the government. If there was any doubt at all this week that there was indeed such an internal rift within the government, that seemed to validate absolutely everything the media had talked about this entire week.
I beg to disagree. After all, this note dated the 25th of March, has been known to both ministers concerned since approximately the 25th of March. All that has happened now is that a note that was prepared for internal purposes of government has come into the public domain, and people like yourselves in the media have grabbed it with both hands and are running. And you've had a good time. Congratulations. I think we've also thoroughly enjoyed the fun and games you've been having with it. But at the end of the day, if you thought the government was going to fall or that there was going to be a catfight in the streets, I'm sorry, you're going to be disappointed. This government is there. It's arrived at about its halfway point. In most lives, there is a midlife crisis. It's then overcome. And I guarantee you that the next election will take place in May 2014, unless our own government decides that we'll do it a few weeks or a few months earlier.
Well, I think that's the big question. Can UPA 2 last its course? That is really the larger question we're also asking tonight. Or have we seen too many internal divisions already, and is this a government that's collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions?
Ankita, you began by saying we debate the big questions of the week. I think here we are debating the big question of the season.
Right. It's
one of those stories which is continuous, ongoing, and will probably outlive Baywatch. You know, there was a very serious incident in Britain in the 80s, which I remember, where a leaf dropped on the train tracks and derailed the entire rail system. It has taken one piece of paper, which Mani says was well known to the ministers, for a flurry of activity, X meeting Y, Y meeting Z, so-and-so, Y and Z coming together and meeting X, and all of them putting their heads together. That's what we've been seeing on television all of the day. Mr. Pranab Mukherjee announces something, grandly flanked by Mr. Chidambaram, a smirking Mr. Kapil Sibal and Salman Khurshid. You know, the entire triumvirate is there. No question.
The same Salman Khurshid who's been telling every media channel all week that there is absolutely nothing wrong, there is no 2G crisis.
And Mr. Chidambaram very gracefully says, I accept the minister's, the finance minister's statement. You know, was it an apology, Mani?
No,
was it an apology?
No, I think...
Now, why, if this is a note of no significance, which has taken 5 or 6 ministries, more than 22 meetings to arrive at a conclusion which perhaps reflects the bureaucratic consensus. It might not reflect the political consensus. It reflects the bureaucratic consensus. If this is of no significance, why has it unnerved the government so much? And what does it take to unnerve a government which is already vulnerable? I agree with you that perhaps the government may not fall, because as we know through political science, the term end game stretches indefinitely these days. But what sort of a government are we getting, which is not yet halfway in its term?
Let's first.
What sort of a government? You say it will continue and we'll see an election in May 2014. but what sort of a government? What sort of a dispensation are we going to see in India till May 2000?
You've asked two separate questions. I think in fairness, we should answer each of them. The first of your questions is, does this reflect a substantive split in government ranks, which deserves, which deserves such consideration as to call into question its longevity?
I said an indictment rather than a split.
All right, we'll come to both your questions. With regard to the first, if in fact the substantial issues there were as grave as you have indicated, then surely over a period between the 25th of March and about the 25th of September, that's a long, long period of time. During that time, there would have been internal meetings to thrash these matters out. There weren't. What happened was a public relations problem that came before the government, because a document that was meant for internal use suddenly came into the public domain, and that too with the courts pursuing it. When this public relations disaster took place, a public relations answer had to be found to it. They have found it over a period of 4 or 5 days, and I promise you that unlike your great wish, this story will be dead by this time next week. You'd have moved on to some other sensation and some other, little bit of excitement.
It's the phenomena that won't die. It's the phenomena which won't die. The story might die.
But let me come to your second question. What is the quality of governance that we are going to have with a government like this over the next 2.5 years? My answer is very simple, exactly the same as we've had thus far. Thus far, for the last 3 weeks, I've been almost entirely abroad. I've been in East Europe, I've been in the Antipodes in Australia, and I've been out in London. And nobody is suggesting anywhere that we are a disaster. In fact, on the contrary, they're saying you're feeling sad that you dropped from 8% growth to 7% growth, while we are in a terrible crisis because we are attempting to get to 2% growth. So I don't think the world at all sees India as being in crisis.
NDTV's cricket app, Android and iPhone. Fastest scorecard, special analysis, and much more. Download free. ndtv.com/apps.